Hi, everyone. Welcome back to a current history quick take. I haven't done one of these in a bit, but I thought with the ongoing situation with the Iran war, this would be a great time to do that. So, as of right now, the U.S. Iran ceasefire is holding barely, and the negotiations that were supposed to follow it are grinding forward under enormous strain. So, here's where things actually stand. The ceasefire took effect April 8th. It was supposed to open a clean 15 to 20-day window for the two sides to negotiate a permanent settlement. That window has not been clean. So the U.S. naval blockade on Iranian ports continued after the ceasefire took effect. Iran reversed its opening of the Strait of Hormuz on April 18th after the U.S. Navy fired on an Iranian vessel. Both sides are still maneuvering for leverage while nominally committed to talks. And yet the talks continue. So J.D. Vance is leading the U.S. side. Pakistan's army chief is still in the room negotiating. The April 22nd ceasefire expiration is days away, and Pakistani mediators are working to get it extended. The analytical point worth making here is this: a ceasefire that both sides are actively testing is not really a ceasefire. It is a pause in which each side is trying to improve its position before the next round. That is not necessarily a bad thing. It is how most negotiations actually work at the beginning with two parties at an effective stalemate. The question is whether the underlying gap between U.S. and Iranian demands is bridgeable, and right now that remains genuinely unclear. Iran's 10-point framework would, by most readings, represent a strategic win for Tehran. The U.S. 15-point counter demands no enrichment, surrender of highly enriched uranium, limits on Iranian defense capabilities, and an end to proxy support across the region. Those are not small asks, but the more important point is the domestic political reality on both sides. Iran fought the United States and Israel for 40 days, absorbed enormous damage, and kept the Strait of Hormuz closed long enough to send oil prices above $100 a barrel. From Tehran's perspective, that is not a defeat. It is evidence that Iran can impose costs on the global economy severe enough to force Washington to the table. So any Iranian leader who agrees to surrender the nuclear program and dismantle its regional proxy network after that performance faces a serious domestic legitimacy problem. The new supreme leader came to power in the middle of this war. He has every incentive to extract something that looks like a win. Trump has his own constraints, so he declared total and complete victory publicly. He called it one of the greatest military operations in history. Accepting anything close to Iran's 10-point framework, which Iranian officials have described as achieving nearly all of their war objectives, creates an obvious political problem at home. The gap between what each side needs to call this a win is real, and it is not just a negotiating position. It is structural, which is why the European push to internationalize the Strait of Hormuz matters more than it might appear. France and the UK are moving toward an independent freedom of navigation mission, separate from the US naval operation. The logic is straightforward. The strait is a global economic choke point. Its closure has already disrupted supply chains, driven inflation projections higher across Europe and Asia, and created an energy shock the IMF is calling a halt to global economic momentum. Europe has a direct interest in reopening it that has nothing to do with taking sides in the U.S. Iran conflict. If that mission gains traction and other nations join, it changes the negotiating parameters. The U.S. no longer needs to tie Hormuz reopening to the full terms of a bilateral deal. Iran no longer faces the choice between capitulating to American demands or keeping the strait closed indefinitely. An international framework for freedom of navigation creates a third option, one that both sides can accept without either one appearing to back down. That is a meaningful development, and it is worth watching closely. The broader picture has not changed. The war did not produce regime change. It did not permanently close Iran's nuclear program. It did not reopen Hormuz on American terms. What it produced was a fragile ceasefire brokered by Pakistan, a negotiating framework neither side fully accepts, and an ongoing economic shock that the rest of the world is absorbing while the two principles continue to maneuver. So as of today, that is where things stand.